Hi, my name is Alexandra, and recently I read The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur, and I have some things to say. So during this video we'll be looking down my notes because I have kept some notes that I want to discuss, and yeah, let's start. So first of all, I picked up Rupi Kaur's books, both of them, like the Milk and Flower and The Sun and Her Flowers, because I wanted to get more into poetry. I haven't really read a lot of poetry before, other than what I've read in school or what I've read like on the side. I've also read The Raven from Edgar Allan Poe, so I wanted to get more into it because I never really liked poetry growing up, and I think it's starting to grow more on me, you know? Overall, I would probably give her, like, for both those books, like a 2 out of 5 or a 2.5. Yeah, a 2.5 would be more, I think, justifiable, because a 2 is a bit too low, but also 3 is a bit too high, so 2.5 is just it. I wouldn't really call these two books, both of them, poetry. I'd say they're more like a collection of drafts of poems, or like shower thoughts, I think would be the best way to describe them. Like, so I feel like Rupi Kaur didn't put a lot of effort in these, and don't get me wrong, you can see some raw feelings. She is pouring her heart out, especially in some of these were very personal, but also a lot of these almost feel like a money grab, you know? I'm not trying to invalidate her feelings in any way, shape, or form, and some of the subjects she talks about are very sensitive. She talks a lot about abusive and toxic relationships, and I think that's great. I think these are topics that we should be talking about, and she talks a lot about a lot. She talks about the relationship with herself, which I liked, and also the relationship with her parents, which I feel like it wasn't explored enough, but we'll get into that in a sec. So I'm not judging her story. I'm mostly judging the way she chooses to prevent. I'm mostly judging the way she chooses to present her story and herself, and how she puts that out there. Also, I like the idea behind a lot of these, and the message as well, but I don't like the execution and the lack of effort. My main issue with most of these were the ones where she talks about love and the relationship with herself sometimes, because a lot of these were very surface level things, or things you can just read on Tumblr, or shower thoughts. The only way I can describe these. And they just felt a bit like a cheap way, a cop-out. Also, I've written down that most of the ones she talks about love, not in the context of abuse though, and her significant other are boring or cheesy, but in the sense that they've been done to death by now. Exactly. There are so many of her poems that are just done before. I can't even find another way to describe them. This book had no rhythm whatsoever, and when you're reading poetry, it has to roll off the tongue, and the lack of rhythm in this book really annoyed me. And I'm not talking all that much about rhyming. You don't have to rhyme, okay? But just the flow has to be natural, and there was none of that in this book, which made it so difficult to read out loud. If you're reading out loud, I don't know. I read out loud sometimes because it helps me to prevent stuttering in real life, because I stutter sometimes. That's why, you see, here, I did it as well. That's why in real, you see what I mean? Sorry, I'm getting out of subject. So if you read out loud, there is no flow, and that is very hard for you to continue reading. Both those books I read quite close to each other, but I didn't keep notes for this one, hence why I'm not making a video. I may, if someone wants to, I may. From Milk and Honey to The Sun and Her Flowers, you can see her progression as a person, as a character. You can see the character development, and I think that's something nice. Finally, the illustrations are pretty nice. I like the illustrations a lot, and I think I read on the back that she's actually an illustrator. Wait, yeah, she is an author and illustrator for 2 collections of poetry. Yeah, the illustrations are great and I like them. not so much the poetry part, but okay. And one other thing that made me very question whether these were actually, especially the sun her flowers, not milk and honey as much. Like, one thing that made me question if the sun and her flowers was actually made from her heart, and if she meant the things she was writing, if she actually put any effort into this, was the fact that she has 22 one-liners in this book, one-line poems, and not even poems. Like, do you go one-liners poetry? Because I personally don't. And whereas in Milk and Honey she had 10, and they rubbed me the wrong way, as you can understand. So let's actually dive in and see some of them. I'm going to start by the poems that I personally found to be bad or not that great. So pages 13 to 14, I thought for a sec that these pages were supposed to be like all a poem all together, but because I thought that it kind of had a flow, but after reading it again, I realized that no, it doesn't. On the last day of love, my heart cracked inside my body. I spent the entire night casting spells to bring you back. I reached for the last bouquet of flowers you gave me, now wilting in the vase, one by one. I popped the heads off and ate them. I have written that it really annoys me how that so-called poems don't have any rhythm to them. Like, you don't have to rhyme in your poetry. Like, make sure that your poem has some natural flow to the way the words connect to each other, because it just makes everything very difficult to read. And that was my first thought when I was starting this book, which, I mean, that's not a good way to start your book, is it? Then we go to page 21, which is the next thing that annoyed me a lot. So this is page 21, and she says, "It wasn't what we left behind that breaks me. It's what we could have built, how we stayed." I thought that, oh, is it really all that easy to write poetry? Because if it is, I can do it. So after a bit of time and a bit of wine, I wrote down, "It's not the accomplished mess that has me to shreds, but rather the ideal rise of our conjoined skies." This is what I mean by I would like to see more effort. Like, I put that together in like, what, 5 minutes? And then we go to page 23 where she writes, "I live for that first second in the morning when I'm still half conscious. I hear the hummingbirds outside flirting with flowers. I hear the flowers giggling and the bees grown jealous. When I turn over to wake you, it starts all over again. The panting, the waiting, the shock of realizing you've left. The first mornings without you." What I was annoyed by this poem though was where she writes in that you've left. That really rubbed me the wrong way, because you didn't have to put that in. You could have left that for the reader's imagination, but no, you decided to put it in. Why? It doesn't really add anything. Other than that, it just takes everything away and it strips the imagination. Like, it gives everything. She writes everything out for her reader, and a book, no, every book actually, gets through so much editing before being published. Didn't anyone think that you don't have to put it in? Like, it would be so nice if it just ended out of nowhere of realizing, I can tell that he left, and if she left that unfinished, it would be reminiscent of the relationship unfinished, and that would be great, and that would have a bit of, like, you could say that it would have some meaning behind it, but oh, the poem is unfinished just like our relationship was. But no, it just spells it out for you, and yeah. So then we're going to page 41 where she writes, "You're everywhere except right here," and your hats. It's boring. First of all, it's really boring, okay? You could have done so much with it. So I wrote in my notes that I should make it out on the spot, like on camera. But then after 5 minutes I wrote that down. I also wrote, "You are the earth I live in, but not in the air I breathe." And I think that would be perfect, because you are the earth I live on, like you're my world. But also, you are not in the air I breathe. You're not around me. You are not a part of my life anymore. But no, you're everything, you're everywhere except right here in your hearts. Like why? Like why? Can you not like put a bit more effort and actually finish it? I don't know. I was just quite disappointed, especially like by that one. I'm getting disappointed as I read it right now. So then we're going to go on page 65. Oh. So on page 65, she writes, "Why did you leave a door hanging open between my legs? Were you lazy? Did you just forget? Or did you purposefully leave me unfinished?" It makes me really annoyed when I hear, especially women, talk about their bodies that way, and especially when it's like, oh, I have a door that needs to be filled. I have a hole that needs to be filled. Your organs are not a hole. You don't need to be filled. The more you put that out there, the more you're going to attract people with the same mindset, because the more people are going to agree with you, the more they will be trying to be in your life. So what she's doing is inviting that in her life because she thinks of herself that way. There's definitely a lot of internalized misogyny, which as we moved on with the book, you can see that she's starting to get more open and have a better relationship with herself and her body, and I like that. But this one really drove me almost insane. Page 83. The only thing I've written about page 83 is that it annoys me and it's boring. Nothing else. So let's go and see what I mean. Yeah. So, page 83, she writes, "You were mine and my life was full. You're no longer mine and my life is full." And good for you that you feel like you don't have to fill your life anymore. That's great. But why this annoyed me is that the lack of originality there. This is literally something you can find in Tumblr and just copy it. I don't know, the lack of effort is just annoying because I paid more than 13 euros for this book. I get annoyed a lot by things that are either unfinished or that have no effort put into them, and that's exactly what I'm seeing here, no effort. But even though I am criticizing a lot of these and I am putting out the reasons why I didn't like it, I want to say that even though that second part of this book wasn't very well written in my opinion, and believe me, I rolled my eyes so much while reading it. She also does go into like some very deep emotionally subjects, and you can see some feeling here, and that she has felt a lot of pain, which is something I actually liked reading. So her story was something I was very interested in, but the way she presented her story wasn't that great and very like low effort. So yeah, I'm not going to be criticizing her story. I just want to make that clear one more time. Next, we're going to page 120, which is the second. Which is the second poem of her third part, which is called Rooting. Look at what they've done. The earth cried to the moon. They've turned me into one entire bruise, green and blue. And yeah, as a person with a very strong love for the environment, I'm vegan, I'm trying to be as zero waste as I possibly can, which is very difficult, but I'm trying, and that's like the most important part. I'm sorry for playing around with my shirt. I think it's poorly done. Yeah, even though she is right and I do agree with it, it also kind of feels like she could have done something more symbolic, something more like a better metaphor or something, but like a bruise, that is pretty basic. I mean, it wasn't that bad compared especially with some other ones, but again, it wasn't good, in my opinion at least. Again, everything I'm saying is my opinion, right? So next we go to page 127 and she writes, "What did we get to their doors and they slammed them shut, I ask. What are doors," she says, "when we've escaped the belly of the beast?" As you can see, I struggled because this has no flow at all. So I rewrote it. It's not that special because I'm not an author. "What if we get to their doors and they slam them shut, I ask." She says, "What about the pot if we take off their masks?" So still not good in my opinion, and I've definitely like changed the exact metaphor because she talks about a beast, but I think that has more flow. It's easier to read, it rolls off the tongue, and hence why I think that was better. and hers was just very hard to read. Next page. Borders are man-made. They only divide us physically. Don't let them make us turn on each other. We are not enemies. I like the message, but there is no flow. The execution was very badly done. It was very poor. It doesn't really make you feel like, oh, that was smart, or that, oh, she's right, or something like that. It's just like, oh yeah, I agree. It's something that you would say while talking to a friend. It's not something that you would expect to read in a poetry book. And this is supposed to be a poetry book. Where is the poetry is what I'm asking so far. So on the start of the fourth part, which is called Rising, she starts with, on the first day of love, you wrapped me in the word special. And she has a cute illustration that I really liked. But the bad thing about this is that the way she ended part 3 was so strong. She went on like this full, she talked about her mother, and she was very powerful and she has some very nice and good raw feelings in there. And then she chose to start part 4 with something so shallow and so, I want to say boring, but it's not even that boring. It's more like shallow and like something that you would read on Tumblr. And I went on a full rant, and I wrote down that maybe it's a me thing, but she finishes part 3 with a very powerful paragraph about her mother, and then she opens the next chapter of the book with not just a one-liner, but also a cheesy one as well, and continues with a love story. And personally, I don't think it's suitable because of the tone. I don't think you could top the family-related poems, especially that last paragraph with a love story. And sadly, you can tell she didn't really put any effort. I think a stronger, more powerful poem, even if it's about love, would be better, more suitable, or a family-related one. But now I was just disappointed. And that's that on that. So, 160. This is the page. One line, nothing else on the page. At this point, this is starting to become like a waste of paper, you know? And she writes, never feel guilty for starting again. But I wrote that, like, I agree with what she's saying, but at the same time, you didn't need a whole page dedicated to that, just that. And also, you could have developed it into a poem, but no. See what I mean by effort? Like, I wouldn't mind if there was like 3 or 4 one-liners in this book, or like even 10, like Milk and Honey had. Which, yeah, Milk and Honey was a smaller book, and it had like 10 one-liners. But also, like, you would see a bit of effort. Like, this one felt like a money grab because Milk and Honey did well on sales, and this one feels like the second movie, like a sequel to a Marvel movie, you know? Oh my god. Yeah. Okay, so 171. Illustration. A mad prize. Name of the poem, A Gift. That is a one-liner, by the way, that I consider that to be a one-liner. Do I even need to say anything? I don't think I do. So then we get to 179. Oh, another one-liner. I am made of water, of course I am emotional. Has that illustration. The illustration is really beautiful. But like, didn't Gabby Hanna write a very similar one? Then we have 3 that I just want to read out loud for you. When you are full, I am full. We are 2 suns. You have been inside me before, another lifetime. To be 2 legs, one on one body, a relationship. Why do you need to do so many one-liners? You could have not made any one-liners, but instead of spending time into filling out one-liners and filling the book full of one-liners, I can't even talk, you could have spent some more time into developing the ones you already have into better poems, you know? You should make a book full of illustrations, that would be great. And she is a good illustrator, I'm not gonna lie. Oh my god, this one, I found my favorite one. She is a good illustrator, like put out a book full of illustrations and that's gonna be great. My favorite one-liner, in a bad way, I'm using the word my favorite like in the worst way possible. It's not my favorite, I didn't like it. I very much was questioning why I'm reading this book at this point. I long to be a lily pad, and this is the illustration. Why? Why? So there was way too much negativity so far, so let's go on to the good ones and the things I actually liked. So page 24, I've written that it has potential and that I like it because it says, the hummingbirds tell me you've changed your hair. I tell them I don't care while listening to them describe every detail. Hunger. This one I liked. It has potential, it has flow, which I loved finally. I like the name Hunger, so like even though I'm telling the hummingbirds that I don't care, I will still listen to them, and I still want to listen, and I still want to find out the new things about you, and I still want to learn about you. Even though I tell them I don't care, I'm hungry for that knowledge of what you're doing. I like this poem, and I like the idea behind it, and I like that she did a good, in my opinion, execution. Like, it's quite shallow, but again, it's quite basic, quite shallow, but again, it doesn't have to be very deep. It has to just have a bit of effort, maybe a metaphor, but this one did it for me. This one was good. Oh, also, I've written down that maybe it's the only love one that I liked. So on pages 30 to 33, she goes on this, not exactly poem, but she describes her an encounter with her therapist where they asked her about what she thinks that love is, and she says that she doesn't think it's him anymore, so like her ex. So I won't be reading it out loud, but you should read that one. That one is great. And I've written down some thoughts that came to mind, and poems that are not just poems, but like books, anything that makes you think and write things down is what I liked. So about the bad ones, I didn't really want to write down anything. I just rolled my eyes, but with this one I wrote things down, hence why I'm saying that it's actually good. So I've written down, what is love? She makes a nice narrative of this idea of love and how we think that we're supposed to find love only in someone else by describing the thoughts of how he's not her ex, as I said, he's not love anymore, how he used to be the one, but how he's not. And it's wrong to reflect love in someone else completely, because love starts inside us. Yeah, because love starts inside us, and I like this message. Love is not something that we're only going to find in someone else, like we're led to believe through films and movies and music. And also, love is not all about others. Love starts and fosters inside us, and we as individuals are the start of our own love to ourselves, to others, and to the things around us. We often tend to forget that, just like she did with this guy. I like this one so much because not only did she put out her own feelings, but she also started this discussion, at least for me, and she is starting this discussion, and she is starting to question everything she's learned so far. Okay, page 44 is a one-liner, and she says, your absence is a missing link. And I actually like the metaphor. I mean, I think that as I said, I don't like one-liners all that much, especially when it's supposed to be poetry, but this one, and like one-liners that are a metaphor, I don't mind. And this one, and I've written down that I like the metaphor because you can live without a link, but it does make your life more difficult, and it feels, probably, I don't have a missing link, it probably feels at the start like your life is over, but you get used to it and you learn to live with it. And my review for that specific one-liner, not that bad, kind of good. So on page 63, she says, you're waiting for someone who is not coming back, meaning you're living your life hoping that someone will realize they can't live theirs without you. Realizations don't work like that. And I think that one has potential. It had no flow whatsoever, but I think it has potential. So I wrote down, you want someone who won't come through, meaning you're living with the hope that they can do without you. And I think that has a bit more flow. I think it's not that good as well, but I think it has more flow. Let me know. Should I just like go on and just rewrite everything? That would be fun. Some other pages that I'm not going to be reading out loud because they're a lot, and 68 to 73, and she goes on and talks about her home and how the life she grew up in, and it's filled with nostalgia, it's filled with feelings, and it's just a great poem to read. And then she goes to page 76 and 77, 7. And again, she continues talking about her home and where she grew up with and her experiences growing up, and that was also good. And then on page 90, again, she went on and talked about the word no and how it was like this forbidden word in her household. So then she grew up being this adult now woman who doesn't know how to communicate when she doesn't like something and when she doesn't want something. And I think that was a I think I really like no I think I really like the message, and I really like the fact that she explains in a way her own experience. And you can say that you can see that if you teach kids that no is a bad word, and you raise it from your kid's vocabulary, that kid is going to grow up without knowing how to communicate. Think, I'm just repeating myself now, I know, but it can lead to very uncomfortable and even worse, dangerous for your life situations, like the abuse that she had to go through. And I don't want to criticize her for anything she has gone through, because you can see, especially like with something like that, you can see that she has so much feelings and so many feelings inside of her. And even though the execution in some other poems were not real, they were not good, you can see that when she really does put out her feelings, they're very strong and very powerful, like this one. So then we go to page 95. I want to read out loud a part of another one of these big ones. She has written down, "I will not subject myself to their ideology, because slut shaming is rape culture, virgin praising is rape culture. I'm not a mannequin in the window of your favorite shop. You can't dress me up or throw me out when I'm worn. You're not a cannibal. Your actions are not my responsibility. You will control yourself." I really liked her talking about rape culture and how rape culture is something that you can learn and something that you can actually defend yourself over. The way she describes it was really nice, really powerful, very, you can tell that she has a lot of feelings on that subject, and I liked that because of it. And on things like that, you can see the effort and you can see that she has so much potential, but she is just not doing anything for it. The Art of Growing is something that you should read. She really puts out her feelings and I applaud her for it. So on the pages of 122 to the page 124, she talks about her mom and her relationship with her mom, and we can see the strong admiration and the strong love she has for her mom, and I think that was very beautiful, and that was something that should have explored more, because the poems that she talks about her mom, you can see how much she admires that woman and how much she wants to make that woman happy and how proud she is of her mother. And I thought that was beautiful and that was great, and that was, she should have explored it more. So on page 132 she talks about religion, well, not exactly religion, but she goes into saying that her God doesn't discriminate her because of the way she looks or because of her body or because of the fact that she's a woman, but rather her God is like full of love. And I like the final line where she says, "My God is beating inside us infinitely." And I like it because she is explaining how God is not a church, shouldn't be just conquered by men pointing out what women should do, but rather a place where all human beings should just be feeling loved and accepted. And I think that was beautiful, and that was a nice take on society, not society, sorry, on church. You see, like this one, you can tell she put in effort and she has a lot of feelings and thought on that subject. So why not explore that more? Why should you go and say something like, fill the book with one-liners of a man who cries the gift, where you can write, she has the potential of writing about church and about all of those serious topics and subjects, but she chooses to not to. So then 133 to 135, she talks about advice she would give to her mother on her wedding day. That was filled with so much love and her being proud about her mother, and it was just beautiful. And again, as I said before, she should have explored more the relationship with her mother. I especially liked the first one where she says, you're allowed to say no. And then on 8 she says, when your mother dies, fly back for the funeral. Money comes and goes, a mother is once in a lifetime. And you can see how much she admires her mom and how much she wants to help her as much as possible. So then we go to page 137 and she says, you split the world into pieces and called them countries, declared ownership on what never belonged to you, and left the rest with nothing. Colonized. That has a flow. That kind of rhymed, right? Not only that, but it also has a good message behind it. I love that one. That was great. That was it. She did it. She can do it. So why not do it? I really like that one, if you can't tell. It goes into... I don't want to talk about Christopher Columbus in this video because it has nothing to do with Christopher Columbus, obviously. But yeah, the colonization of countries. So then we go on page 139 and she writes, my voice is the offspring of two countries colliding. What is there to be ashamed of if English and my mother tongue made love? My voice is her father's words and mother's accent. What does it matter if my mouth carries two words, accent? I really like this one because as a person with two mother tongues, I can relate. People may make fun of you. To me, they haven't, but I've met people who actually were getting bullied because they speak two languages. And that one made me smile, and I think she is definitely right. So then we go on to the pages 144 and 145. And she talks a lot about how during different centuries and different ages in time, women are getting so much abuse, like not just from society. And she really goes in and talks about those things. And I don't want to read it out loud. I think you should get the book just for that. That one was beautiful. The amount of time she talks about abuse and the way she talks about it shows that she is actually really educated on that subject, and I would love to see more about it from her because she clearly knows what she's talking about. This one made me emotional to read due to the tough nature of it. I will not be criticizing it. Then we go to the page 148 where she has done an illustration of her mother, and it's so beautiful to see, and I really like that. The relationship with her mother is something that she should have explored more. And then finally we go to my favorite thing she wrote, and it's on page 151, and she writes, so how dare you mock your mother when she opens her mouth and broken English spills out. Don't be ashamed of the fact that she split through countries to be here so you wouldn't have to cross a shoreline. Her accent is thick like honey, hold it with your life. It's the only thing she has left of home. Don't you stomp on that richness. Instead, hang it up on the walls of museums next to Dali and Van Gogh. Her life is brilliant and tragic. Kiss the side of her tender cheek. She already knows what it feels like to have an entire nation laugh when she speaks. She's more than our punctuation and language. We might be able to paint pictures and write stories, but she made an entire world for herself. How is that for art? And that, when I read it, had me to tears, and that was so powerful. That is how she finished part 3, and then she went to part 4 with the one that I read before. That had me to tears. That was powerful. That was raw feeling. And as I said, my mother is also from another country, and I can speak Russian, and I felt that in my soul what she wrote, and it made me feel very sad for sometimes that you may like make fun of your mom, not actually make fun, but you know, like talk back, and sometimes, yeah, it made me feel so many things, and that was beautiful, and I think she has so much potential because of it. So 184. Your voice does to me what autumn does to trees. You call to say hello and my clothes fall naturally. Why is that in the good ones? So the only reason I put that in the good ones is because when I first read it, it made me like chuckle. And I also was like, hey, can this pass off like a pickup line? Are we calling pickup lines poems right now? So it made me laugh. I said that the final 3 lines, that I'm going to read out loud. For if we can't learn to be kind to each other, how will we ever learn to be kind to the most desperate parts of ourselves? That one I think is very powerful and very important to think and to keep in mind and to remind yourself, because sometimes you're just yourself's worst enemy and yourself's worst critic, and we need to be reminded of that. So the sun is setting, so I'll wrap it up a bit faster. So then we go to the page 115, and this is my favorite illustration in the whole book. I think this is really beautiful and it really speaks to my soul. And then we go to the page 120, and she writes, "She's not a pawn category of the type you look for on a Friday night. She's not needy or easy or weak. Daddy issues is not a punchline." And I agree with that one, because, and I wrote down that, is the daddy issues thing directed to someone in particular? Also, I agree, and also it's really accurate for now and the daddy mommy issues and the romanticization of it on social media. So then we go to the pages 224 and 25, and she writes, "It is $1 trillion industry that would never collapse if we believed we were beautiful enough already. Their concept of beauty is manufactured. I am not human." And I've written down that this is a good point of view on society, and especially the fashion industry, and how it, the sun is setting, sorry, it forces beauty standards upon us, but also we as humans aren't created and manufactured on through an industry. And I think that is something we have to remind ourselves. That was the last one I actually wrote something about, and overall, I don't think her book was bad. I don't think she is a bad author. I think that she just didn't really go into detail and didn't really write anything. I think she went in and wrote some things, like the one-liners, just to fill up space, when she could just have put more time into developing the ideas she already had. So overall, I like the illustrations. I think the female empowerment feminist ones were important. I like the family and related ones, especially the ones related to her mother. I thought that was very beautiful and something powerful. I like the ones with tough subjects, and I am not going to be criticizing anything, as I said. I didn't like most one-liners. I didn't like the love ones. I didn't like a lot of the cheesy ones. I especially don't like her lack of flow. I think she should have explored the relationship with her mother more, because it was really interesting and powerful, and I want to see more effort and more flow on her next work. I don't know when she's putting out a new one, or if she even is putting out a new one, but I would like to see more effort into these. Both of these books were a 2.5 to 3 for me. I think Milk and Honey was a bit better because of the lack of, she didn't like try to fill in any blanks with just shallow one-liners, whereas that's what she did in The Sun and Her Flowers, in my opinion. But also, The Sun and Her Flowers had some very powerful ones, like the ones about her mother, or the ones about abuse, or the ones about female empowerment and saying no to the society standards about women. These ones were good. So yeah, I think she has a lot of potential. I don't think she's a bad author. I think she has a lot of potential, but she is not exploring it enough. So that was everything I had to say. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider leaving a like down below. You can also leave a comment on what you think about this, if you agree or you disagree with me, and consider subscribing if you want to. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you on my next video. Bye! Can you get back inside, please, and thank you? No? You're just gonna stay there? Okay, take a call. Yes, of course. This is not making me self-conscious at all, whatsoever. Okay, whatever. What? And can you not? Rude.